I live in Marin County, and out in Point Reyes there's a paper called the Point Reyes Light, and in the paper there's a section called Sheriff's Calls, where people actually call into the sheriff for a cow in the road or a tenant dispute or whatever, and that's my inspiration. So this first piece is called It's Your Lucky Day. From the Point Reyes Light, January 27th, 2011. Lagunitas. At 5:48 p.m., a woman discovered a man asleep in a sleeping bag in her back shed. The man told the woman he was cold. Cold, Beth wondered. What did I care about him being cold? She hurried inside to get a lantern and a gun. Anyone sleeping in her shed, cold or not, had to go. Taking her Blue Point hound and her .22, she marched back outside. She jammed the shed open with her foot. This ain't no hotel, mister, Beth said, rising up her gun and loading it with shells. She had filled her pockets with them. 2 would do it. 4 would fill him with buckshot. 6 would blow him to smithereens. The guy eyed the shotgun. No, ma'am, sorry, his rheumy eyes bloodshot. I was riding. Horse saw something, bucked me. I know it's not public property, ma'am. Again that pleading through red-ribbed eyes. Beth frowned. This is my house, my land. Sure enough, ma'am, he frowned. Shelter in a storm. Can I stay the night? He licked his lips. Ain't no bother. If you like, I can sleep with the horses, the lambs, the pigs. Fat chance of that, she said. The hound sniffed the man, stood back, a low rumble in his throat. The man bent down, pegged him as a friend. I used to hunt in Alabama, ma'am. Again that rhythm of talk she'd heard all her life, that lilt that made her hate her father, angry during the day with that voice, those intonations, silent at night when he came into her room. The hound buried his muzzle in between the man's knees, tail low and moving fast. Not from around here. Don't recognize you at all, she cried. Fit as a fiddle except for this leg, the man said, lifting his foot, ankle not holding right. But I'll leave if you like, he said. Me and Bessie are best friends. He rubbed the hound's ears. Tristan, get your ass over here. The hound left the man, came to Beth, rolled up in the crouched position, tail down, watching her watch him. An owl called in the night. Beth's hand shook as she held the lantern. 10 miles down a dirt road outside Point Reyes Station. Closest house 5 miles away. A hound who was useless to her. A gun loaded and cocked. A man who sounded like her father. She had no choice. She raised the gun. The man dropped to his knees. Please, he said. A crow cawed. She held her breath. Man? Hush, she said. God's talking. She paused. Well, okay then. She dropped the gun, broke the stock, turned. God's in a good mood. It's your lucky day. Come on in and have some coffee. It's cold outside. And now for something a bit different. This is called Love in the Locker Room. Point Reyes Light, September 29th, 2011. Lucas Valley. At 12:23 a.m., inmates at Juvenile Hall were caught making love in the locker room. Oh my, Mildred said, catching her breath. Oh my. She got up from her flowered couch, paced the house nervously. Fred, Fred, she called to her husband, who was sprawled on the other end of the couch, deeply offended about the end of the giant season. Huh? What is it? He sat up dumbfounded. Animals, Fred, that's what they're like. Those teenagers at Juvenile Hall. She poked at the paper as if it held a disease. Those kids. Having another bad day, Mildred? Fred asked, shifting his weight and taking his stocking feet off the coffee table. You were upset last week with your sister. Now this. This is different. In the locker room, Fred, we were never like that. Fred, reaching into his 80s, wished he'd been like that. Meeting Mildred when she'd been 18, with her beautiful little rosebud mouth, her clear blue eyes, her vivacious spirit, if they'd had the chance, maybe he could have had fun with her in a locker room, but times were different then. Smitten, he had taken her out like a gentleman, driving his father's truck carefully from D Ranch, getting her home on time, nervously asking her father for her hand. With a bow tie on, too. Fred hadn't looked as sharp since. He looked down on his worn-out plaid shirt and brushed crumbs off his collar. He had promised Mildred's dad he would take care of her, and he had, hadn't he? The house he'd built in Inverness Park hadn't come down yet. It sagged in the middle like he did. Big deal. He shuffled to the kitchen for another bud. What are those kids in those places for anyway? Common criminals, I'll say. Mildred peered through her kitchen curtains at Mrs. Flanagan, a neighbor. Mrs. Flanagan was edging toward Mildred's garden again. Mildred rapped the window. "Someday you'll break the glass, dear," Fred said with a sigh. "She's stealing my gazanias," Mildred said, upset. "First the kids, then this." Mildred smoothed the front of her apron, adjusted her glasses. "Kids these days, Fred, you'd think they had better things to do." "Locked up in prison, I'm not so sure." "I didn't ask for your opinion," Mildred snapped, wrapping her hand around the sugar bowl. No sense of propriety, no sense of shame. She thought better of hurling the sugar. They'd had a big problem with ants, and even though Fred had vacuumed them all up, she still felt they were in the vacuum cleaner, eager and ready to get out. Fred thought it was kind of interesting, those kids. They had moxie. He couldn't remember the last time he'd had moxie. Speaking up 2 years ago in church, recalling his trip to the cardiologist, he eased himself back on the couch in the warm spot he had left, comfy and spread out just like he was. A spring was winding its way through the cloth. He pushed it back in and covered it with Mildred's afghan. She'd never know. She never sat on his side of the sofa. Fred, don't you see?" Mildred asked, eyes aflutter. "These kids, they had something. They had passion, Fred. When was the last time we had passion?" She came to sit down next to him, her little bony body pressing on his ample belly. She felt like a bird, but passion, he thought, no. "Mildred, please, you're squishing me," he complained, gently relieving the pressure and hoping to avoid her landing on that spring. Spinning on her heels and coming down on the opposite side of him, resting herself on the arm of the couch, she lifted off her horn-rimmed glasses. "Oh, Fred, kiss me. Kiss me like those movie stars. Let me feel that passion. Forget about the baseball game." Fred, awash in feelings of trying to remember if it was 1 out or 2, felt his body want to respond, but how? Why? Mildred was playing with him like a fiddle, and he was a drum. Wrong instrument, wrong day, wrong goddamn decade. He hadn't remembered the last time he kissed her fully. Now he looked at her thin lips with just a brush of coral lipstick. She'd missed her mouth again just a bit. Nothing new there. But she smelled so Mildred-like. If he could close his eyes, envelop her, they were on the couch, comfortable even. Married 50 years. They had a right, didn't they? He puckered up. She rose quickly, turned on the lights, marched into the kitchen again, flipped back the curtains. "I can't, Fred. That goddamn Mrs. Flanagan, she's into my tulips again."